And remember when we went to the HTML programming, what did you do in your web programming assignment?
Web program.
Yeah.
Created a website.
Remember I told you that you should write your own code, so you remember that for the final exam. Now, in total, this whole section, I think was 10 or 12 marks. I'm saying 10 or 12 marks because this is just a sample. The real exam would have slightly different mark questions. So there are quite a few different ways how we can ask you questions. Either we can give you a website, a web page, and ask you to write the code that will create a web page like that one, or we give you instructions, create a web page which has this list, that list, or create a web page with a table, and table has this, the border thickness is this much, and the background color is this much. Okay. So in other words, whatever you've done in your web programming assignment, that was inserting pictures, so you know how to write the code to insert pictures, creating tables, ordered list, unordered list, changing the background color, changing the font, yep, inserting a link. So our questions are basically based around the things that you have done in the assignment. So you'll be writing the code. However, there would be few other questions with multiple choice questions as well. So more of those ones. So if you concentrate on your web programming assignment and the lectures for this one, I don't see a reason why you can't get all the questions correct. Okay. So the questions are basically whatever you have done, especially in part 1 and 2 of the assignment. Part C was more like metadata and Kafka style sheets. So part A and B, these are the questions are based, specifically the coding question. Okay. Any questions regarding that one? Again, this question relates to computer hardware, first few weeks of the classes. So if you review your lecture notes for those ones and read your textbook, you're more likely to answer all of those questions. And most of those questions would be either multiple choice, or we might show you some things that, some pictures and stuff, and you write the answers in a little editing area. Now this question is based on both of them, binary number conversions and Boolean expressions. Binary numbers, we did both 1's complement and 2's complement. So review all of them. You should know how to convert from hexadecimal to binary, octal to binary, or binary to decimal, or either way. Okay. And when we're dealing with 2's complement and 1's complement, the negative number comes into play as well. So you should know all of those as well. Now the second part of that is the Boolean expression. So we give you values for numbers, variables, and give you Boolean expressions, and you have to say which one will be true and which one will be false. Now, the binary numbers ones, because after you do the calculation, you only get one answer. So most of those questions would be short answer with one word answer. Yep. And same goes with the binary numbers. We can give you the binary expression, and you just choose whether that will be true or false. Yep. That's how we do it. Now see here, we say give your answer as 4-digit binary number, that it is. But if I ask here, give your answer as an 8-digit binary number, then I would put in 4 zeros in front of it. Okay? Not here, because if you put it in here, that changes the value. So just be careful when you answer those questions, because we're not marking them manually. Okay, now we've got some questions on GUI programming and simple Java programming. Again, these questions would be both. They would be questions where we ask you, what does the following piece of code do? Yep. Or we can ask you to write a piece of code. Okay. So we can ask you to write a piece of code using the if statement to do this, or we can put in some restrictions that say only using single if or nested if, so you should be able to do that. So in here, So both type of question, what it does and what, or writing code to do something. Now again with GUI, when we say GUI programming, the questions could be, we might ask you how to set a value in a particular control, or how to retrieve the values from a particular control. When we say particular control, that could be your text boxes, your labels, your radio buttons, or your lists. Yep. Basically, everything that you've done in Java part A, B, and C. Okay. Especially part A, because you put the values in the text boxes, you retrieve the values, and you selected things from the radio buttons and stuff. Okay. So out of those, any of those, you should be able to do those ones. And you've written some codes, obviously, that should be a problem. Now programming with arrays, loops, and text files. Again, the questions we can do, when it comes down to programming, we can ask you the questions in both of the forms. We can give you a piece of code which uses arrays and ask you what it does. And then we might ask you, this is the array, complete this code to do something. So there is a lot of ways how we can ask those questions. But basically, when it comes down to programming, when we say programming with arrays, that's what it would be. You would have an array in it. So we might give you code to say what it does, and then we might ask you to write a code to do something. Again with loops, so we've done 3 loops, while loops and for loops. Many different ways asking the question, give you the code, what it does, which has a loop. Or we might use a combination, loop and array in one question and ask you what it does, or ask you to write a code. So the loop questions can again be ask you to write a piece of code to do something using for loop, and then ask you to do the same thing using a while loop. Okay? So it could be anything. Now to review those ones, we've actually got quite a few different tutorial questions on this one, so it would be a good idea that you review your tutorial questions, as well as your part A and B and C of your Java assignment. Working with SQL databases, the questions would be very much similar to what you have done in classes. We give you tables, and then based on the tables, we give you the SQL queries and ask you what it produces. And then, based on the tables, we'll give you a description and ask you to write the SQL query to match up those conditions, or we might just give you a table and say, write the code which will produce the following result in the table. Okay? In other words, nothing is going to be in the exam that you haven't seen or done before. Now, testing and error handling.